Hi,
Okay.
I'm talking today to UK Counsellor Joy Archer. Hi Joy, how are you?
Hello, Joanne. I'm fine, thank you.
Very good. Joy, today we're going to talk about work-related stress and anxiety. What is stress and what are some of the signs that somebody could be suffering from stress?
I would say that stress happens or manifests itself when you develop an inability to cope with what is going on for you at work. It may be performance related. It may be something which is going on for you outside of work, which is affecting you at work. But certainly, it would happen that a varying number of symptoms might present themselves. Some of them physical and some of them psychological.
Can you give us just a few of what those symptoms may be, just like one or two of them?
Being unable to remember things that you remembered before, which can be quite frightening if you're normally very efficient and very on the ball. Putting things down, not remembering where you put them, feeling nauseous or tearful, driving somewhere and having no recollection of having gone there. That sounds very strange, but short-term memory loss makes you feel very insecure.
And when it comes to anxiety, how is it different from stress?
Anxiety is different in the sense that it can manifest itself very unpleasantly as a generalised thing, and you may not always know what triggers it. The most severe form of that, of course, would be panic attacks, and there would not necessarily be any reason for those. Waking up feeling like your stomach was going to go through the floor and that something awful was going to happen and you were going to die. You might know in your head that nobody dies from anxiety, but it feels very, very acute.
And what are some of the main causes of work-related stress and anxiety?
I think we're seeing a lot more of it now that the economy has become so difficult and the workplace has become so demanding. And it's hit the public services now particularly hard in a way in England that it hadn't done before. And I would say unrealistic expectation is part of it. And sometimes expectation that has to be, even though it feels unrealistic or unattainable. The feeling of the goalpost being constantly moved, that is certainly a factor. If I were going to define it in one word, I could say bullying, but it's perfectly, obviously while that will cause stress, you could be stressed without being bullied. If I were going to sum it up in one word, I would say powerlessness.
And you specifically work a lot in the teaching field. Why do you feel that stress and anxiety are so prominent in this field?
Well, I'm a former teacher myself, and I've kept very much abreast of educational affairs. I contribute regularly to the foremost educational forum in England and have done for a long time. And I know a lot of teachers personally, and the reason I think it's coming in such a way in England, I think it began with the league tables, with Ofsted. Now, there is no reason why teachers shouldn't have performance targets. The days have gone when you could simply wander into a job and do what you felt like doing all day and go home again. But I think there is an inordinate amount of pressure on heads these days to perform. You're only one bad Ofsted away from losing your job. If the head themselves doesn't handle stress well, that travels downwards to the staff. And the other factor, I think, is school budgets. It is very difficult. Now, schools are in charge of their own budgets. It is very difficult to manage them in this economic climate when the biggest part of them is staff salaries. I don't think it's any coincidence that a lot of teachers who are finding themselves on fast-track capability, which now is something which schools can do, I don't think it's any coincidence those teachers are about to pass into the threshold and have to be paid more, who are in their 50s, who are at the top of the threshold and therefore expensive. And on top of that, of course, can remember a time when you could voice what you felt and it would be listened to. And I perceive there's thorns in the side that heads would rather get rid of in favour of younger and more malleable people.
If you suffered sustained bullying in the workplace, can it have a lasting effect regarding anxiety?
Definitely. Sustained bullying in the workplace can actually cause post-traumatic stress. And I know at least one case in the UK where somebody has had to leave their job as a result of that, and they are actually taking their employers to court. There have been cases where employers have been found liable for somebody else's long-term post-traumatic stress, and damages have been awarded, and those damages can be very, very substantial.
And
it's a long process, and of course, it's a long process, and of course, if you've been bullied, it's not something you feel like taking on.
As a counsellor, how can you step in and help people to manage stress and anxiety in the workplace?
I think, firstly, the important thing is that once somebody is suffering that and seeks help, they realise they're not alone. One of the first things people suffering from this do feel is there is something wrong with them, that they are somehow responsible, that they are somehow not good enough, and quite often it hits people who are competent, who are caring, who do want to go the extra mile, and they do hit themselves very hard when it happens to them because they feel guilty on top of everything else. And of course, if they have supportive families, that has an effect on them as well. So going to a counsellor in itself means you are talking to somebody neutral, and you are talking to somebody who will walk alongside you and convince you, as you empower yourself, that you are not a bad person, that you are not inadequate. And you do have options, and sometimes, realistically, it has to be that as you're working with somebody, they may not like any of the options available to them, but they do have a safe area to talk out the least of the evils, I suppose, in order to empower themselves and heal themselves, because it's such a damaging process.
How exactly could you give a tip or something that somebody could use to try and reduce stress or anxiety in their life if they're feeling like they're suddenly starting to feel very stressful or anxious?
I think the first thing to realise is that it does come over insidiously rather than suddenly. And once it's taken you over, quite often you are in a frozen grip of powerlessness, and it's much harder to address. I would say, in terms of managing workload, seek advice from somebody in the workplace who you trust. If you don't want to go to a line manager, go to an experienced professional. Talk about how you're feeling. Ask if there is any way they can talk through with you any strategies to deal with managing what goes on for you day to day. Go and seek advice from a GP quickly. If you're not happy with the GP you talk to, go to another one in the practice. It could well be that in the early stages you will be able to control what's happening if you're introduced to some simple exercises or some mindfulness techniques or something like that. But the first thing I would say is seek help early. Don't think, I feel a bit weird and horrible, it might pass. If you feel in any way unlike yourself, go and get some help.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thank you, Joanne. It's been a pleasure.
Okay.